Hi, fans that I don't have. So today I'm gonna be continuing me my my horrible histories, the measly Middle Ages, and I have a sore throat, and I'm dumb because I am dumb, and you can't read this. I think maybe you can. Well, I'm gonna read the real chapter 1 and 2. Chapter 3 and 4 today. And it is gonna be the best thing of your whole life. And if it isn't, then I should not be making these videos and chicken nut popsicles. So, I'm just gonna walk because I have feet and you don't. And now you're sad because I just said that you don't have feet. And, wait. So, if I put the phone here. No, I'm gonna put the phone here. Sorry. Chicken. Now you can look at the TV. And now you can't. I have to see. Reverse. Timeline. Nope. Nasty Normans. The bruised Brits had been battered for 1,000 years. In 43 AD, the Romans ruined them. In the 5th century, Saxons savaged them. In the 9th century, the Vikings vanquished them. These were the Dark Ages. No jokes about them being called dark because there are a lot of knights around in those days. Good joke. But in 1066, the Normans finally nobbled them. Even teachers know that William the Conqueror landed in 1066 and won the Battle of Hastings. The nasty Normans took over. These Normans were Vikings who settled in northern France. They wore pointy hats like witches. And who can blame them? They'd probably heard the story of King Geoffrey of Brittany. King Geoffrey was on a journey to Rome. I don't think it's Geoffrey, that just sounds wrong. Was on a journey to Rome when one of his hawks attacked a chicken in a tavern yard. The innkeeper's wife was furious. She picked up a big iron pot and threw it at Jeff. It hit the king on the head and killed him. The nasty Normans nipped in and nicked Jeff's land for themselves, wearing helmets to avoid low-flying pots, of course. That is so smart. The Normans had more riders and monks to record the history of their times. We are no longer in the dark so much. We've left the Dark Ages and entered the later Middle Ages. So where's the Middle Ages? The measly Middle Ages, when times were tough and life was hard. What? Measly food and a measly death by plague, or war, or torture, or simple overwork. I got through it all. The famines, the fighting, the Black Death, and the grinding hard work. How old are you? 25. Ooh. And you think homework, school dinners, and history lessons are bad? Number 1, I'm not in high school. Number 2, I'm not in high school. Number 3, I don't want to be in high school, but I have to be. Bloodthirsty Bill. Bill the Conqueror was Norman leader in 1066. He said King Edward of England had promised him the English throne. King Harold said the same thing. It was a fight to the death for two tough fellers. The English must have hoped Harold would win because Big Bill was bloodthirsty. So he's a cannibal? William of Normandy was teased because he was said to be the son of a tanner, a leather worker. When he attacked Alencon in France in 1048, the people poked fun at him by hanging out skins and shouting, "Plenty of work for the tanner's son." This may not have upset you, but it made Big Bill furious. He attacked and took 34 prisoners. Oh my God. He paraded them in front of the town walls. As the people... Sorry, I'm very dumb. Forgive me for being a dumb human being. But lots of people are dumb. Just not you. He paraded them in front of the town walls. As the people of Alencon watched, he had their hands and feet cut off and lobbed over the wall. "That's what'll happen to you if you don't surrender," he promised. They surrendered. Good job. William led an army against the Count of Arcs, but he marched so fast that he arrived outside Arcs town with just 6 men. The Count was waiting with 300 knights. William charged at the Count. He turned and galloped for the safety of the town. The 300 knights fled after him, and the Count was William's uncle. That's just so dumb. William wanted Maine in France as well as England. Walter and Mantes claimed both of them too. Willie captured Wally and his wife and locked them up at Falaise, where they died. Some historians say they were poisoned. When Will conquered England, his reign was harsh. One historian of the time wrote that devils had come through the land with fire and sword, but kind William abolished the death penalty. His last law said, "I forbid that any man be executed or hanged for any offense, but let his eyes be gouged out." How is that not kind? That is disgusting. Of course, when an English earl called Waltheof rebelled in 1076, William forgot that law. Will gave Walt a chop at Winchester. Measly. I wish someone would remind him. Oh, sorry, I'm dumber than chicken nuggets that eat barbecue sauce. Some English rebels didn't know how cruel William could be. They soon found out in the north of England, when Will and his Normans marched on York, every Englishman and boy they met was slaughtered. The army was broken up into smaller wrecking parties. Anything of any use to a human was destroyed. Houses burned to the ground, crops burned, cattle killed, and farm tools broken. From York to Durham, a whole generation of people were wiped out. The roads were scattered with corpses, and some said the survivors turned to cannibalism to stay alive. In 1086, York was still almost deserted. "If I ever get my hands on that vicious butcher William, I'll eat him." You'll be pleased to know that when Billy the Bully tried to do the same to a town called Mantes, his horse trod on one of the burning cinders and stumbled. The fall hurt William's great gut, and he died in agony. Family feuds. The Normans didn't like the English. In fact, they didn't even like their own family. William the Conqueror's brother, Odo, looked after England while Bill popped back to Normandy. What thanks did Odo get? William threw him in jail. But Bill's sons were worse. They fought against each other, and they even fought against their dear old dad. William the Conqueror probably couldn't write. He had clerks to do that for him. But if William could have written a letter to his wife Matilda in 1079. Gerberoy Castle, Normandy, January 1079. Hadil, close the door. Dearest Matilda, you won't believe what Robert has gone and done. Only gone and beaten his dad in battle, that's all. The ungrateful little swine. Oops, pardon my French. As you know, he was rebelling against my rule, so I rode up to Gerberot with a few hundred lads to sort him out. Mama, can you close the door?
If you want to take a video, you need to take it with the rear camera, not the front camera.
No, I can't. What does he do? He locks the gates. What do I do? Well, I besiege him, don't I? A few hungry weeks without his venison pasties, and he'll come begging for mercy, won't he? Always been fond of his grub, has our Robert. But he doesn't. Instead, he gets his forces together and comes charging out of the castle. He attacks me. I thought I was supposed to be attacking him. Of course, he's made a big mistake. No one has ever beaten William in battle, as you know. He charges straight for me. Took me by surprise, that did. Knocked me clean off my horse. Don't worry, my love. He didn't hurt me very much. The rest of his men began moving in for the kill when that English lad, Toki, rides up with a fresh horse and saves my life. Poor young Toki got killed, but the main thing is I survived. Now, I don't want to worry you, my darling, but our young Will was fighting on my side, and he took a bit of a knock. He's recovering nicely, and he's quite a hero. I always thought he was a useless little twerp until now, as you know. No, but I've decided to give him the throne of England when I go to that great throne in the sky. As for Robert, he can have Normandy, and the ungrateful little beggar is welcome to it. Home soon, my dearest one. William. Normandy, January 1079. Dear William, just wait till I see our Robert. Fancy knocking you off your horse. He needs teaching some manners. Mind, I always did say you spoilt that boy something rotten. A few whacks with the flat of your sword would have done him no harm at all. And I suppose you needed Toki's help because you are getting too fat to get back on your horse by yourself. When you get home, you are going on a diet, my lad. Do you think that you could remember to bring me some of that local woolen cloth? Green if you can get it. Hurry home, the dogs are missing you, and I'm keeping your throne warm. Love, Matilda. P.S. Don't forget to wipe your feet before you come into the great hall. I've just had new rushes put down. William forgave Robert enough to leave him Normandy, but when old William died, young William Rufus got England. This caused a lot of quarrels between the brothers. Each wanted what the other had. A third brother, Henry, got just 5,000 pounds of silver. Who came off best? Henry, actually. William Rufus was killed by an arrow when he was out hunting in the New Forest. Though some historians think measly Henry might have arranged that accident. Henry took William's English throne, crossed over to Normandy, and defeated Robert in battle, and took Normandy too. Henry had the lot. William the Conqueror would have been proud of his murdering, fighting, ruthless son. What is his dad doing? The fatal forest. Dun dun dun. The story about William Rufus being shot in the New Forest is quite well known. His brother, Henry, is suspected of murder because he was in the same forest at the time of William's death. But strangest of all is the fate of Richard. Richard who? Richard was the fourth son of William the Conqueror. In 1074, Richard was killed in a riding accident. Guess where? That's right, in the New Forest. Richard came to a very painful end. He was charging through the forest on his horse when he collided with a tree. There were no driving tests for horse riders in those days. If there had been, Richard would have failed. Richard was carried back to Winchester, but his injuries were so bad that he died soon after. William the Conqueror was really upset, and the tree can't have been too happy either. Felled by a stroke from an oak? Nah, it was a bash from an ash. Okay, I need to fix my seat. Sorry. The Normans brought the feudal system with them. The king was at the top of the heap and peasants at the bottom. They paid for everything. They worked in his fields, worked in his castle, repaired his roads, all for free. The peasant then worked on a small patch of his own land in his spare time. Not a lot of that. If the peasant made any money, then he paid taxes to his lord. He paid the lord for grinding his corn, pressing his apples, or baking his bread in the measly lord's oven. That's disgustingly dumb. I'm a villain. My lord lets me live on his land. In return, I work for him. I'm a slave, the lowest of the low. And I'm even lower than you, 'cause she's a girl. I'm a free peasant. I farm the land owned by my lord. In return, I pay him rent. I'm poor and miserable. I'm poor, miserable, and overworked. I'm a knight. I get I get my land from the king. Sorry. I have to keep on doing this because I'm so mean to you. You guys are crying. But I love this. I'm a knight. What? I'm a knight. I get my land from the king. In return, I fight for him when he needs me. Nothing but fight, fight, fight. And who has to look after the land while he's away? Poor me. King time. I'm king. I get my land from God. In return, I say prayers, build churches, and fight for him. But there's always someone after my throne. And I'm always trying to give him sons to carry on the royal family. What a life. I'm God. I thought I'd made all these chaps equal. Maybe my other servant will sort this out for me. I'm death. They're all equal as far as I'm concerned. But a dose of plague will do them the world of good. And the plagues of the 14th century certainly changed the world. After the Black Death, there weren't so many peasants about. Peasants became rare and valuable. My dear little working chap, work for me and I'll pay you double wages. It's more pleasant for peasants at present. That's a bit better. But remember, I'll be back. You'd think the peasants would be better off dead. They weren't. After a peasant died, the measly lord took his best possessions. After all, they had only been loaned to the peasant during his lifetime. No wonder. The peasants are revolting. In the measly Middle Ages, peasants had a short life, but a miserable one. If overwork didn't kill you, then you could die from ordinary things like a rotten tooth. Storing food over the winter could give you a type of food poisoning. Then there were extra nice diseases to look forward to, like St. Anthony's fire, an arm or a leg would get burning pain, then drop off. When you died, you'd hope to go to heaven, but stories went around that peasant soul didn't get to heaven. Demons refused to carry it because of the horrible smell. They were really revolting. While the peasants froze in the field, died in ditches, or starved in slums, the rich people had fun. In the 14th century, Count Robert of Artois had a very pleasant garden. It had statues that squirted water at you as you walked past, a trapdoor that dropped you onto a feather bed, a hosepipe that squirted water up ladies' dresses, a statue that squawked at you like a parrot, a room that greeted you with a thunderstorm as you opened the door. I thought that they didn't have any technology. Have a nice relaxing walk in the garden, he said. Ha ha. No wonder the peasants hated the nobles in their castles. The peasants didn't go to school, but they knew one simple sum. There are more of us than there are of them. In France in 1358, they decided to take over. The French rebellion was known as the Jacquerie because any peasant was known as a Jacques, a John in English, a very common name, so it was a revolt of the Johns. Or they wore padded boiled leather jackets as a sort of cheap armor, and these jackets were called jocks. So it was a revolt of the padded boiled leather jacket. Take your pick. Either explanation could be right, or both could be wrong. It's actually the number one. Of course, the peasants weren't used to organizing themselves. The nobles were. At first, the jocks murdered a few surprised nobles. The Paris Post. Peasants have nights and days. The brave battling peasant army has a new leader who is leading the Jolly Jacquerie to victory. His name is Will Kell, and he's just what the proud peasants need. A strong leader and an experienced soldier. The revolt began 4 weeks ago, when the peasants grew furious that the French king had been captured by the English, and the noble knights had done nothing except run away. Were armed with axes, scythes, and pitchforks, a 10,000-strong army captured over 100 castles. Knights fled with their families, or stayed and died. There are reports of Jock's jokes, like roasting a knight on a spit, then forcing his wife to eat the roasted flesh. Amazingly, 2 enemies, an English knight and a French knight, joined forces to help Meaux when it suffered a Jocks attack. Capital de Bouche and Gaston Phoebus said, "When noble ladies are in danger, a knight's gotta do what a knight's gotta do." The knights, with an armed force of just 120, cut the Jocks to pieces with their weapons. "Using swords against scythes is cheating," Will Kell grumbled. Now there are rumors that Charles of Navarre is leading a fight back in the east. Kell says, "Charles of Navarre? Charlie's for the chop, you'll see." The Paris Post supports their battling efforts. "Our brave boys!" But Charles of Navarre used one weapon that Will Kell didn't have: brains. Cruel Kell conquered. The knights are back in power, where they belong. The Paris Post proudly announces that wicked Will Kell is dead. The Jacquerie is over. Peace has returned to our troubled towns. Charles of Navarre's likable lads faced Will Kell's revolting rats near Paris. Charles suggested that they should talk, and Kell, the clot, arrived without a guard. Naturally, Navarre nabbed him and locked him in chains. "That's cheating!" Kell cried. But no one was listening. The leaderless louts of the Jacquerie were massacred, or ran like rabbits. Cheerful Charles gave Cale the crown he craved, a crown of red-hot iron. Then he cut off his hateful head. Where was I? Hateful head, hateful... Okay. Now he plans to lead an army of destruction through the region. Peasant houses, fields, and families will be destroyed, the noble Navarre promised. The Paris Post supports the overthrow of the sewer-scented masses and the return of our true leader, Champion Charlie. The English peasants were a little way behind the French. A little way behind the French when it came to rebelling. The English... You can't even see it. Wait, why do you even need to see? You only need to hear. The English peasants were a little way behind the French when it came to rebelling. The English peasants' revolt happened 23 years later in 1381. It wasn't only the French king knights who could do a bit of cheating. English King Richard II was pretty good at it too. The peasants in southern England were so fed up with paying a poll tax that they marched on London to see the king. They murdered a few unpopular lords on the way and stuck their heads on long poles. How do I fasten the head onto the pole? Try some poll tax. That's not funny. But the lords were probably glad to have their noses well away from the smelly marching feet. The head of the revolting peasants was called Wat Tyler, which could have been a problem. What's your name? That's right, it is. What is it? Yes. Ask a civil question. Anyway, what 20,000 rebels reached London and presented their demand? No more poll tax. No more slavery for peasants. Freedom to use the forests. Freedom to hunt wild animals. Freedom from heavy signs? What? To keep on doing stuff because the lord in London promised to give in to his demands. Wat didn't believe them. What a wise Wat. His arms raised their trusty, rusty swords and marched into London, murdered a bishop, a lord or two, and as many foreigners as they could get their sides on. The 14-year-old king, Richard II, perched on a war horse, promised Wat his support. Wat believed that king, showing he was a really unwise Wat. The head peasant boasted, "In 4 days' time, all the laws of England shall be coming from my mouth." But Wat Tyler didn't read his horrible history books. He didn't learn from what had happened to Will Kill 23 years before. He agreed to meet the king and his guards at Smithfield. Some historians say that Wat Tyler began by picking a fight with the king's squire and drew his knife. The Lord Mayor of London, William Walworth, drew his sword and killed Tyler. The leaderless peasants gave in, just as the French peasants had after Kill's death. Which just goes to show, history repeats itself. Wat's head was stuck on a lance. The head peasant had become a headless peasant. What a way to go! Whose head? No, Wat's head. The Saxon Streaker. William and his Normans are famous for a Domesday Book, a record of everything everyone owned in England. Once the Normans knew what people were worth, then they could tax them. A lot of people forget that the poor people of England knew all about paying tax long before the Normans arrived. Wait, I'm doing my video. The most famous tax dodge was the deal made by a famous Saxon streaker called Lady Godiva. Roger of Wendover wrote that the first report of her daring deed. Here it is in modern English. What is missing from Roger's version of this famous story? The good Countess Godiva longed to free the town of Coventry from the misery of heavy taxes. She often begged her measly husband, Earl Leofric of Chester, to free the town of those taxes. The Earl laughed at her. "Your request is foolish," he said. "Don't you see how we need that money? To cut those taxes would be to hurt me. Don't ever mention the subject again. We have a very expensive lifestyle." But Countess Godiva had the stubbornness of a woman, a very sexist remark that Wendover would not get away with today. She would not stop pestering her husband about that matter. It should be the stubbornness of a donkey. "Get on your horse, ride naked through the marketplace in front of all the people. If you do that, I shall grant your request." Countess Godiva replied, "If I am willing to do this, do I have your permission?" "You do," he agreed. At this, sorry. Let it fall until it covered her body like a veil. She mounted her horse, and escorted by 2 knights, she rode through the marketplace without being seen except for her fair legs. When she had completed the journey, she happily returned to her astonished husband and was granted her request. Earl Leofric freed the town of Coventry from all taxes. That is smart. Well, I suppose we could save money on clothes. When the story was repeated 100 years later, a historian added a new character to the story, a fiendish fellow called Peeping Tom. While all the other citizens of Coventry went indoors and gave the Countess some privacy, Terrible Tom spied on her. Which just goes to show, don't believe every story you read, especially history stories. Did you know a knight owned his peasants? They were considered part of his wealth. If you attacked a knight, then he'd probably shut himself safely away in his castle. The next peasants in the villages around, the next best thing to do was to attack his peasants in the villages around. The next best thing to do was to attack his peasants in the villages around. Now, in moral nickname, in 12th century France, Thomas de Moral, nicknamed the Raging Peasants, cut off their feet or put out their eyes. What a measly way to go. I have to get some new peasants. These ones are broken. Dun dun dun. Okay, this is the end of my 34-minute vlog, which is longer than what would happen if a worm ate a worm 58 times. And then 7 more times. It's even longer than that. No, 35 minutes. Yep. My chest is hurting because I was lying down. So, goodbye, all my fans, and also don't forget fans, because my reading is cooler than your face. Okay, probably not. But it's only cooler if you're. It's only not cooler if you're wearing sunglasses. And if you are wearing sunglasses, no, if you're not wearing sunglasses, then my reading is cooler than your face. Or earmuffs, cool earmuffs or headphones. Bye.